Good morning from the World Economic Forum's Davos meeting in 2026. My name is Scott Galloway. I serve on the faculty of NYU. Today we're going to be talking about why we're so divided. Welcome everybody, and thanks for getting up so early for this panel. I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves, please.
My name is Alexandra Matvichuk. I'm a human rights lawyer, Ukrainian Nobel Peace Prize laureate. We are documenting war crimes in this war which Russia has launched against Ukraine. And while this war turns people into the numbers, we are returning people their names. Because people are not numbers, and life of each person matters.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Oliver Bethe. I run an insurance and asset management firm called Allianz. We serve about 100 million people, and lots of them trust their savings with us.
Got it. So I'll put forward some theses and maybe have you respond to some of the reasons why we might be so divided. One, our electoral politics, sort of from the very get-go, create a level of extremism in government. And I don't know if this is the case in your countries, and I'd love to get your viewpoint here, but in the US, it must be amazing to be an elected leader because they keep figuring out ways to do what's called gerrymandering. And they create hard left or hard right districts. And we have two things. We have a primary, then we have a general election. And basically the election is the primary because all regions in the US now, or most of them, are either hard red, extreme to the right, or extreme to the left. And essentially what we do is we send mostly crazy people to Washington who do not represent the kind of the middle three quintiles of America. So we kind of are set up to be divided by electoral politics. And that is the only people who can make it to leadership positions tend to be very, very hard or extremists. I'm going to start, actually, I'll start with you, Alex. Is that evident in your nation as well?
No, we have the biggest problem, I think, this personal opinion, that we have is the way democracy fails when you have special interest groups become the majority. So just to give you a number, in 2021, 50% of the eligible electorate was over 50, and soon it's going to be 60%. So if you wonder why we went from 20% of all public spending on pensions to 40% and it's gone to 50, is that nobody is over 50 is going to vote for reducing pensions, even if very soon we will not be able to afford them. So democracy must fail. It's not because people are nasty, but the structure of how balance is provided doesn't work. So the answer is, because people always ask, so great, you're always amazing at describing problems and dissecting them, how do you solve that? It's a very hard thing to do. You need to ask whether my 90-year-old father should be allowed to vote on pension increases.
Right.
So I think that's a fundamental problem, because the older you get, and I just turned 60, so I'm becoming part of the problem.
You look 50.
Is you think about...
You look 59 and 7/8.
Yeah, I've got some good medication. But kidding aside, and some good creams, is that the issue is really, we need to think about the economics of democracy and how do you make sure it fails. Now, it's starting in Germany and other countries that the young people, even young parliamentarians, are organizing themselves. But the reality is, people over 60 vote 90%. People under 25 only vote 40% and less. So the young guys are not even voting. So they're not being represented. And if they vote, they often vote for very particular interests, right? I want to save the planet. I want to do this and that. While the old people who have all the money are very clever to unite themselves and protect. So we need to fix this. And it's very hard to fix. And you see in countries like Italy, who haven't grown since 1994, after Germany, my favorite country in the world, people only talk about distribution of wealth and preservation rather than about growing it. And we need to remind humans, if you want to distribute something, you need to earn it before, right? So again, there's a lot of problems. I think it's the #1 problem for Western democracies. The US is different. I learned from you yesterday evening that you have another one, young males. We have a few of these things too. But in my personal opinion, this is the #1, the biggest issue we need to fix. And it percolates into anything. Why we don't innovate, why we don't take risks, why don't we fix infrastructure and invest in it because it's good enough, it will last my lifetime, it may not last for my children. And by the way, a lot of people don't have children anymore because, you know, who wants to bring up in a world where everyone is 80 years old?
Yeah, I just want to move on. In some, old people keep voting themselves more money. So obviously, as a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, you have, or your organization has demonstrated an ability to bring people together At least that's what I would argue is one of the criteria for the prizes. You're obviously dealing in a much more serious environment. It's more than just electoral politics. What are your thoughts on when you speak to somebody who is on one side or other of obviously what is a devastating war? What do you think is taking us further apart? And how was your organization able to, quote unquote, bring people together?
Let me look to the problem from another perspective.
Yep.
How we see the world define our actions and our decisions. And the problem is that people now spend more and more time in digital reality, which is overloaded with fakes, disinformation, and propaganda. It's led to a situation that people start to lose the ability to make a distinction between lie and truth. They are very vulnerable to different kinds of manipulations. They live in bubbles. So what we have for current moment, generally, not just, I mean, in Ukraine, I mean in the globe, we have a situation when people, even from one small community, have no more a shared sense of reality. But without a shared sense of reality, these people can't do common actions. Without common actions, how these people will respond to global challenges or protect their freedom and their democracy. So this is a huge problem which must be addressed.
Yeah, you're touching on something that is cited a lot, and that is our media. Unfortunately, there's a profit incentive in conflict. And moderates have if you're center left and center right, there's not a ton of conflict, but if you're far left and far right, there's a lot of conflict. And when Ted Turner figured out that news and then Rupert Murdoch is entertainment, there's entertainment and conflict. And then so it's not a lot of fun to have a reasonable conversation. It's more fun to have varying viewpoints. You sound pregnant with a comment.
Let me based on this, because we live in a world where civilizational battle between authoritarianism and democracy is going on. For how the new world order will look like. Will it based on human rights and freedom or on something else? And modern authoritarian regimes, they have no common ideology. Modern authoritarian regimes have common narratives.
Yeah.
They try to disseminate distrust between people, ruin our connections with reality, and to convince us that authoritarianism means strong and effective, and democracy means weak and ineffective.
Yeah.
So what's the problem even with people who live in well-developed democracies? These generations inherited their freedom from their parents. They have never fought for freedom. They became consumers of democracy. They consider freedom as a possibility to make a choice between different cheeses in supermarket. Even more, they are angry and disappointed of democracy because democracy is not ideal. There are still a lot of problems being unresolved, for example, social inequality. And we were so confident that democracy is the final answer that we stopped promoting it. That we stopped promoting it after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And nobody tell people that, yes, democracy is not ideal, but authoritarianism and countries who have authoritarian regimes, they don't solve these problems either. The only difference is that citizens have no rights to complain in such types of countries. So we must do two tasks parallel: to protect our democracy and to perfect our democracy. This is our citizens' obligation. And we need to have politicians who will have this honest conversation with people and to tell them about these two tasks, because the alternative, even to our imperfect democracy, it's a hell of authoritarianism regimes.
But even within parties that mostly agree on 95%, it feels like the incentives are, even within parties, to be very divided and angry at each other. And that we have, unfortunately, the world's largest media companies, including many that are here, are talking about AI. Unfortunately, profit and revenue has been attached to conflict. There's an incentive in pitting. The two of us very much agree on Ukraine and the danger of authoritarianism and and the incredible freedom fighters of the Ukrainian army. But there's not a lot of money in that. And so the algorithms will try and figure out a way to get us to find something we disagree on, and then fill up the comments with vile, antagonistic messaging that gets me angry and keeps me coming back. Because every comment is another Nissan ad and more shareholder value. So it feels that if, unfortunately, our economy is tied right now to ideological conflict, where I'm going to back up and ask, you're younger than us, our generation, do you think that some of it is accountability on our end, and that is we're not willing to take accountability, and that is we never actually take responsibility for anything and always want to blame someone else, that every problem we face is a function of someone else's trauma being levied on us? Is it an actual generational sociological? Is it just not Meta's fault? Is it that we inherit ideologies as our identity, and if you disagree with my politics, you're not saying you're wrong, you're saying you're wrong? That it's a software problem, not a hardware problem, so to speak. Are we entitled and so selfish and self-absorbed that we have trouble entertaining another viewpoint?
Yeah, so again, I'm a statistician, so if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I'm going to describe it from a incentive or rules background. We have not modernized the rules of democracy to the world of the internet, social media, and others. I'll give you a simple example. My personal opinion is we need to change electorate laws and say whoever is caught lying purposefully loses the right to be elected for office.
And who decides that?
Well, we need to get that through Parliament. And we need to just, and this has to be substantial, and you put a court in or you put a function in. Why do I think that is important? Because the point around misinformation is really huge. The second one, this is just the political economics view, and I can give you a few other examples of what we should do. It's very hard to do, but I think we need to do that, and including holding companies accountable for that. Yeah, and then you have the debate on free speech, because again, you get attention, you get votes by being extremist, and you see that in many countries, including yours. So I'm trying to be cool about it in terms of people do what they're incentivized to do. The other thing has more to do what she was describing before, that we have forgotten that democracy only works if people are engaged and take a role in it. We have become, as she described wonderfully, consumers of democracy. I had to tell my kids, they're 26 and 27, that a community like a soccer team doesn't work if one guy tries to shoot a goal and 9 people think they have the right to get the salary. Yeah, and think about the debate of universal income. And you can debate that, but it says, yeah, but I don't want to have any obligation exchange for this, right? We believe in many democracies now, it's totally okay to say, I want this, but I have to make no contribution. I don't have to pick up my garbage. I don't need to take care of my parents. I don't have to worry about their education. I'm just entitled to everything and obliged to nothing. Have you seen any community anywhere in the biological or in the universe where it works that one piece only takes and the other one gives? They're called black holes. And it doesn't work. So we need to remind ourselves that communities only work if you contribute, and everyone has to contribute. Now, some can contribute more, others can less, and we can debate about what is the level of contribution you have to do. But we need to understand democracy does not function, in my opinion, and many people, if you don't contribute to it. And it's not about paying taxes. We think, I pay taxes 50%, I'm done with it. And that's, I think, why communities fail.
So we're talking a little bit about trying to find institutions where people believe there is an objective truth, right? That people think, okay, at some point we rally around data and something resembling an objective truth. How does your organization put out information, and in what format or what mediums or the tone, such that you feel that the people who receive that information will feel this is an objective truth, that you can establish credibility?
I don't think that it's enough just to share truthful information. If we want to return people connection with the reality, we must engage them in something concrete actions. And this is what my organization is doing. For example, during Revolution of Dignity 12 years ago, I launched civil initiative, which is called Euromaidan SOS. And we brought up several thousands of people throughout the country who worked 24 hours per day to provide legal and other kind of assistance to persecuted protesters. And every day, hundreds and hundreds of people who were beaten, arrested, tortured, accused in fabricated criminal cases passed through our care, because it was time when millions of people in Ukraine brought up their voice against pro-Russian, authoritarian, corrupt regime. And even despite the situation that this regime has total control over informational dimension, because we engaged people directly, they know from inside what's going on. It's very difficult to create artificial reality if you are not just observer, but active participant.
And so there's a lot of leaders here, and it appears that the marketplace was ready for, well, back to your notion of an objective truth. I like the idea.
Fact.
Well, I know.
Truth is something else. That's a matter of, just so you know, is the number 22 or 24? That's not so complicated.
Got it from there. Do you feel, I'm trying to figure out a delicate way to put this. It feels as if there is elections to be won by being divisive. That at least in America, and I think in the West, we got sick of leaders who were trying so hard to please so many people and get along that their rhetoric became, it felt unreal. And then a set of leaders emerged in the last decade, and I'm sure, and it's happened before, that were so antagonistic that it felt, quote unquote, authentic. So is antagonism and maybe putting forward viewpoints that may not survive a fact check, is that the new realpolitik where that's actually how you get elected? That, quite frankly, it's the electorate's fault, that they seem so sick of this like moderate blather, trying to please everybody, trying to acknowledge every point, that they were ready for a set of leaders that, quite frankly, the truth didn't get in the way of a good story, and their anger and antagonism, which was mistaken for something that was authentic and real. Any thoughts about the rise of what I'll call, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the antagonistic leader?
That's a symptom. Sorry, Scott. I don't
No,
want to.
please.
I have, again, been looking at the facts, the problem that I think that's the symptom, and it's driving it, how people, politicians respond because they are intelligent people, how to get majority. But I think people are voting extreme because the outcomes are not coming. I really believe that people get angry as citizens because they get stories being told and the goods are not being delivered. By the way, that happens in a company, but you get fired. You can get elected on a story and then you can blame someone else for not delivering the good. It works for 4 years, right? If you have an election cycle and then you can say it was my previous administration, it was the bad guys, you can blame the neighbor. In many democracies, we had a lot of problems like failing infrastructure, schools not working. Think Germany, right? One of the richest countries in the world. We can't get the basics anymore done because we have highly incompetent people in many, many places. But we voted them in. It's the fault of the electors in the sense of you don't get engaged and don't. And by the way, it's also big companies' fault. When we say we have 19 sickness days in Germany, which we have, which is double, is because of leadership problems in how the companies are run, right? Because we're buying our way out of conflict with awarding things that if they multiply over decades, they suddenly make you uncompetitive. So the symptom is clear, the electrics, how people get elected is clear, but the underlying problem is democracies have to deliver basic goods, public goods for people. They have to deliver safety. It has to be safe for a 17-year-old girl to walk the streets of Cologne and not getting raped by someone saying, well, we have different cultural expectations if you come from an Islamic country. It's credible, and I'm not a rightist, I'm a left person. But you have to say the truth. And then you have to deliver the goods and says safety has some requirements. And, you know, public infrastructure has some requirements. We are spending more time in my home city of Munich, which is the most beautiful in the world, on building roads for bicycles than asking ourselves why constantly school hours are not taking place. So I think that's a symptom, but the issue is we need to focus democracy on delivering basic goods at the highest possible quality. I mean, here in Davos, we can't even organize traffic anymore. What does that shed a light on perfect Switzerland? Sorry, and we had to fix these things.
These are good problems.
Good problems to have. They're much more basics.
Yeah, but to the end there. I want to give you, we're running out of time, and I want to give you an opportunity, if you could deliver a message, or, you know, there's some people here, there are people watching live stream. If you could deliver a message from your organization and the people of Ukraine right now, what would that message be?
My message will be that we have to step in the civilizational battle for freedom and democracy. We are losing freedom in the world. 80% of people in the globe live in non-free or partially free societies. We saw how people who live in well-developed democracies start to exchange their freedom for something else. So we have to think what the world our children will be inherited. So my message is that we have to be brave and to be vocal about it.
Be brave and be vocal. I think that's a good place to wrap up. I take it we're not doing questions, is that right? We're not doing questions. Oh, we're wrapping up. All right, that's it. Why are we so divided from the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos in 2026? Appreciate everyone getting up so early in the morning to come listen to us. Very, very much appreciate our panelists, and have a good rest of Davos. Thank you.
Thanks.